Welcome to the Hope Christian Weekly Sermon Recap. We hope you enjoy this discussion as we unpack how we can practically apply this week's sermon in our everyday lives. For more podcasts and sermons, feel free to visit us at hope-christian.com.
Hey everyone, this is Pastor Seth with Hope Christian in Barry in Washington. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Sermon Recap. We're on week 4 of the Discipleship series. We had Pastor Dave Ogren speak on the Spirit-filled life. I'm here with Pastor Barry, our associate pastor and worship pastor here at Hope. How you doing, Barry?
I'm doing great.
So Pastor Barry, would you share with us a little bit of the background that you have with Pastor Dave Ogren?
Certainly. Yeah, I had the privilege of serving with him for 9 years at Philadelphia Church. And I had, before working with him, I had been working at a church plant in the area and just felt called just to leave that ministry place really in a great season. Even the last day that I was there, the pastor basically said, "Why are you leaving? Everything's great. We want you to stay." But I just felt the Spirit leading me to step down. And so I went back to my home church, which was Philadelphia Church. And within a year, Pastor Ogren asked me to step on as worship pastor. And so I got to begin. I started serving as worship pastor, and then later on as youth pastor and worship pastor. And that's when I stepped into full-time ministry. But it was just an honor to work with him. He became one of my spiritual fathers, and I really learned so much from him. And it was a difficult season in some ways, and I'd never seen someone handle challenges like he did. And so, again, it was just an honor to watch him minister through those 9 years and to work alongside of him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting how God sometimes will call us out of a good situation. And sometimes our expectation is, he's going to move me into a better situation. But sometimes it does go from a good situation to a hard situation as you go from different seasons, going from harvesting to planting.
Absolutely.
Now, Pastor Dave mentioned something really profound in his sermon on Sunday where he said, we need to remember that the need is not always our calling, that just like we saw with the disciples in Acts, there are times we'll look around and we'll say, hey, there's a big need here. And we assume, because there's a need, that must mean we should jump into it. Whereas in regards to Macedonia, God wasn't calling them to go east. He was calling them to a different place that they didn't even fully recognize. So how do we do that in our own lives when we're weighing the different needs in our city or in our lives or our sphere of influence? How do we go to the Lord and actually figure out, what is the calling for my life in this season versus just chasing needs?
That's a really great question. I think most of us in ministry have had a moment. For me, it was when I was in a prayer meeting where we felt the Lord very clearly call us to something. And I have found throughout my life there has been other doors that have opened up for me. And some of the doors seemed like better opportunities. In fact, that's happened at least several times in my life where it would have felt like a promotion. Mm-hmm. And I had to go back to that original call and ask the Lord, is my mission over? And I think the Lord often speaks to us by granting us peace. Or he doesn't give us peace about something. Yeah. And I think that's how the Spirit sometimes leads us. And both of these opportunities that I'm thinking of right now, even though it was an open door and there was a need there, I did not have that clear call like I had experienced previously. And so I think the Lord, if we're patient with him and we're listening, he does make it clear to us. He does speak. I think he speaks to us in different ways. It's not a magic formula. Mm-hmm. But we definitely have to put aside even what logic says sometimes. Because in the natural, like from a business standpoint or financial standpoint, it just makes sense to take the promotion or to go to the greater opportunity, but that's not always what God is calling us to do. And so, so there's the need, and sometimes it even looks good on paper. Yeah. And it's so important to hear what the Spirit of God is saying and to take that time and just even resist the temptation to make just the logical choice.
Yeah. I think one thing I've had to figure out in my own life as well is there are long-term callings, like the long-term path that God's taking you on life. But then there are shorter-term or more intermediate-term callings that God is using to actually build things in us so that we can complete the long-term calling. Mm-hmm. And I've had the temptation of thinking, okay, I feel like in some ways God's revealed big picture stuff. And so I frame my mindset as, okay, let's just run after the big picture stuff, where God actually has thrown some curveballs because he's like, hey, if we're going to get to the big picture stuff, I need to develop in you other things that are going to actually reinforce what I have in the long run. So how do we decipher those moments where it's specifically going towards the big picture calling and the moments where it might seem pretty random and we might not have any idea what he's building in us, but we just have to kind of step out in faith into those shorter term?
Yeah. I think we always have to live with open hands, where at any point we're ready to do whatever God is asking us to do.
Yeah.
And specifically when I was at Philadelphia Church and I was the worship pastor there was, I believe it was a Monday, where I was just kind of cleaning up the stage after a Sunday service. And I just heard the Lord say, I want you to step into youth ministry. And so that was kind of what you're talking about. It wasn't my long-term calling, but it was in that season that I developed speaking gifts where I was able to, because I had to preach every Wednesday night at youth group. And the Lord developed and cultivated even just a love for young people, which is still part of my passion today, especially now as I'm mentoring young worship leaders. And so if I had just been more narrow-minded and like, oh, no, that's not my calling, I would have totally missed that opportunity. I was the youth pastor for 5 years, and I grew in ways I never would have grown if I would have just thrown that idea out the window. Like, that's not my calling. And so we need to be open to things and just, like I said, live with an open hand, like whatever the Lord's calling us to do, and just have an open mind. So I think having an open mind is huge. And we like to figure out, how God's going to work, and he's going to put us in this spot. And we like to have things figured out on our schedule, and God's schedule and even his path is so often different than what we would have chosen.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because similarly, I never intended to get into youth ministry. The only reason I did was actually because a pastor that came into town gave me a prophetic word about youth ministry. This was probably maybe a year and a half before I ended up out here. And so I started getting involved. And it wasn't because it was naturally my first inclination, but then as all the pieces fell, it was youth that brought me out here. And then come to find out that God had, other plans than even that. So there was this inner conflict of, I didn't feel like that was where I was supposed to be long-term, just like you said.
Yeah.
As we look for another youth pastor, I actually believe we're going to find someone that's far more anointed with youth than I am. But God was using it as a stepping stone towards the next thing that he had in store. And so that can be a faith-building process when it doesn't exactly line up with what you thought was going to happen for the long run. Now, I want to highlight on something else that Pastor Dave said, is he talked about posing the question of what if we got up every morning and we asked God for wisdom, we asked him for his heart and his perspective. That's a powerful thing. If everyone in our congregation legitimately got up, they had their daily bread, they had genuine engagement with God through his word, through the Holy Spirit, they had genuine time in prayer, and everyone went into their day saying, God, I'm here, I'm available, I desire to be part of what you're doing today. How do you think that shapes a congregation when we have that heart posture that he talked about?
Well, I believe the Lord would honor a congregation whose heart was set on that, and that's just exciting to think about. What if all of us did that every morning?
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time contending for that myself. I know one of the enemy's greatest tools is distraction and busyness, and so I think it's something we all need to push towards, and something I just started lately was just looking at my day with the Lord and allowing him to schedule the day for me.
Yeah.
It's like it's like we meet together and we look at the day and like what do we need to get done today, and just allow him to put things on our schedule that we would not have just put on there ourselves, and just allowing time. A couple weeks ago we talked about how it's important to listen when we pray.
Yeah.
And so I think listening and just allowing the Lord to drop his thoughts into our mind and eventually onto our schedule, I think is crucial. And so I believe that every believer in our church needs to be contending for that moment to really start the day off with the Lord and let his heart and his plans and his agenda infiltrate into our soul.
Yeah, amen. Well, Pastor Barry, I have one more question for you. This is a little bit off topic, but because of how God's been moving so uniquely and specifically in services, I'm curious to hear what you're most excited about in the way you see God orchestrating pieces and what he's doing and how he's moving. What are you most excited about in this season that God is bringing hope into?
I would say two things. First of all, I believe God is doing some amazing things in our house churches. And as we've been going through this discipleship series, I've just seen a lot of fruit already in our house church. Mm-hmm. And I mean, last week it was just electric. I literally felt like electricity flowing through my body as the presence of the Lord was just filling our room, our living room, and we're basically packed.
Yeah,
it's a great thing, and I feel like we are truly waiting on the Lord and just listening and praying in the Spirit and just allowing the Lord and His Word to impact us. I'm super excited about house churches. I'm also excited about allowing the Spirit to lead us more during our Sunday gatherings as we are transitioning into kind of a new format where we're not chopping up the service, there's no halftime, where as we get into the presence of the Lord, we're going to stay there.
Yeah.
We're going to use spiritual gifts from that place. We're going to preach the word from that place. And so just even in a gathering, we need to be Spirit-led.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about making room for that and seeing what the Lord does even in our gatherings. I'm anticipating miracles, life-changing things going on as we gather on Sunday and people hearing from the Lord. And the feedback that I get from some of our newer people is just incredible, and it's all centered around the fact that the presence of God is in our midst. And so so being Spirit-led, even in our gatherings, where it's okay to have a plan and a schedule, but really making room. There's a song, "We Will Make Room for You," that I'm thinking of at the moment, and it's one thing to sing the song, but let's actually do it. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm so excited that last week was the last time we had to cut transition to go to announcements. this is something that I know, Barry, you and I have been talking about for 2-3 months now, and figuring out, okay, how do we implement this? What needs to happen? How do we need to structure things to make it effective? And there's been several confirmations along the way of just God making it so clear that if we want to go deeper, if we want more, He's got more for us. And we're so excited to give that valuable, treasured time through the service back to the Lord without having to interrupt for announcements and different things going on in the middle. And so just a reminder, this coming Sunday, October 9th, we will have 8:45 start of the first service, 11 a.m. start of the second service. Please come and join us, worship with us, enter into the presence, get there at the beginning of the service. We want to all enter in together, engaged in the presence of God in powerful ways. So that's it for this week's sermon recap. Thank you, Pastor Barry, for being with us, and we'll be with you guys again next week.
Thanks for listening to this Hope Christian Sermon Recap. To submit prayer requests or additional questions about this week's sermon topic, visit us at hope-christian.com/prayer. Let's rebuild our city, one disciple at a time. Have a blessed day.